Welcome everybody to today's A to Z of property strategies with the awesome DJ David Clouter in the car wash, yeah. Let's get in the car wash, yeah.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. It gets wackier every week, doesn't it?
It does indeed, it does indeed. So, where are we up to? We were doing ends last time and we were doing new builds. So, are we still on new builds?
No, we've moved from new builds to another N, which is non-standard construction. We could talk about this one for about 4 hours.
Well, what do we call standard construction? Let's start with that. And then we can look at the non-standard. Because, I mean, non-standard, I've seen car tyres. I've seen hay bales. We've got concrete construction. We can print it. That's non-standard. We can make it out of words. We can have a log cabin out of logs. I mean, come on, David. What do we describe as standard?
Well, Lego, anyone?
Yeah, I suppose somebody's bound to have done that.
Brick construction with a slate or sort of concrete tile roof would be a standard kind of thing, which I suppose just means the majority of properties. That's often on the questionnaire when you're buying a house. Is it of standard construction? Then if not, everybody digs down. And if it's ticked, they just go, all right.
So if you've got a thatch roof, that's non-standard construction, even though it was standard back in the day.
That's true. Yeah. And an interesting one, thatched roof. I've never bought a thatched roof property, have you?
No, there's an awful lot of them around us in this area, but I don't fancy the bill for replacing the roof every sort of 10 years or so. It's very expensive.
What I do is I sort of outsource that task to the owners of those properties, and then I just drive by and have a look at them and go, how beautiful.
They all seem to appear on a box of chocolates, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Chocolate, anybody?
So yeah, that's another type of non-standard. But let's kind of, well, I was going to say start at the beginning, but you've taken the beginning back a notch with those thatched cottages, and now we'll have to do the wattle and daub and things, and the sort of round houses made out of mud, but kind of. Moving a bit forward from those, can we go?
The bank that I've been converting, that's full of lath and plaster.
No.
And the plaster has actually got horsehair in it. That's how
Really?
old the building is.
Wow! And they nicked that out of somebody's mattress, I expect.
Probably.
So well, yeah, that takes it a notch back further than me, really, to be honest.
I'm just keep pushing that clock back for you, David.
Absolutely.
So where should we start with this non-standard construction then?
Well, I thought we could start with Hitler, and after we'd kicked his butt and got him out of the scene at great cost to our nation and everybody, the government felt the need, quite rightly so, to throw up lots of housing post-war quickly and cheaply. It was an effort to build those homes fit for heroes, and didn't quite work in the case of those. But it was let's start with the Wimpy No Fines house. I'm not quite sure. Well, actually, interestingly enough, Wimpy obviously was George Wimpy, he of the construction firm, and No Fines. I'm cheating, and I've got this on Wikipedia. Okay, refers to the type of concrete used, which was concrete with no fine aggregates. How about that? So, right. And that I did not know. But they whacked all these things up, and you'd have basically, I don't know, 2 bits of plywood or something, and some steel in between, and you'd pour this concrete down the graph, and you take the bits of plywood away, and all this kind of thing, and they were really blown together. The steel reinforcers weren't treated with anything, and they're surrounded by wet cement and this kind of thing. So over time they all went rusty and this kind of thing. So this would be a sort of red flag. In terms of buying it. There are lots of other things thrown up at about that time. Those you can see because they're pebble dashed on the outside, and it's pretty obvious what they are. There's another type which I forget the name of, but Google is available. Similar kind of thing, which looks like a brick constructed property. It looks on the outside quite normal. and you think that was fine, the only correct way to identify that particular one is to go up in the attic and see where the wall meets the eaves, and you'll see the steels coming up to indicate that it is of that non-standard construction. But there are a few lenders who will lend against these kinds of properties, and they do represent good. I was going to say good value for money, but they're not good value for money if they're crap. But they are significantly cheaper than the other properties nearby. However, and there are some lenders who will lend against it, but obviously the pool of lenders who will lend against these kind of properties, particularly as they get older and start to get even more crumblier, it's only going to go one way. It's not going to open up so that a lot of other lenders see the light and think, what have we been missing out on? It's going to contract as lenders say, my God, are we still lending against those? And so you might end up ultimately with something that can only be sold to a cash buyer. So for that reason, plus the fact that they are essentially rubbish, I avoid these properties. But that they are available. A lot of them are, as I say, XLHA. And so that's the bad end of non-standard. But there's lots of other non-standard as well, such as all the things that you mentioned, and I'm very excited about those. Timber framed are getting lent against, by which I don't mean somebody propping them up with their elbow. I mean, banks are considering mortgage advances for these, and rightly so, because they go up quickly, and they're pretty damn solid, and they're good. And then we've got these modular things that come from Germany and Scandinavia on the back of a lorry, and if you're doing them, always do it with their teams. And don't use kind of local lads. There was a friend of mine who was building one recently, and the team had come over from Scandinavia or Germany or something. They're all standing by with the lorry and the cranes or something, and the local guys doing the footings didn't show for 2 days, which caused a bit of friction. So and lots of good local guys are available, but I'd say just keep a tight lid on it, and these can be watertight, can't they, in 24 hours, which is an extraordinary achievement. You've still got to do your first fix, second fix, and all that indoor stuff that you'd have to do anyway. But to have a watertight thing, especially if you're living in an area where it rains a lot, is pretty useful.
I've seen these go up, and they go up so fast. And if they're often pre-built off site, they come first fix, second fixed, and literally everything's just plugged together, and the house is ready within a very, very small amount of time, weeks, not months.
Yeah.
And they're very fast.
And as we get permission now to build upwards on our properties, especially if we're in, for example, a posh part of London where all the neighbours are film stars or bankers and this kind of thing, we want to minimise the disruption to those guys. So a lot of those upward things are now also come in that same way on a crane, and they're just lowered into place and click, click, click. And so it's pretty amazing. Tesco is a retailer. Other retailers are available, but I know for a fact that Tesco do this, where when they buy one of their mini Tescos, are they called Tesco Metro, I think, and they build this, they buy this old shop which was a laundrette or something. They take the measurements and they build something off site, and then again they just slide it in, plug it in, it's good to go. And so it minimises the inconvenience when you're in a built-up area of having builders there and scaffolding and all that stuff for weeks on end. So I think it's a good thing, that particular type of stuff.
It absolutely is. I mean, the modular build is coming on in leaps and bounds as a technology. And according to government, it's going to be the thing that they start backing a lot more. Pension funds have got into it by buying factories. I think it was Legal and General, if I remember correctly, bought a factory in the north of England to make modular buildings. And they're also building them themselves as purpose-built accommodation, which they're then putting into their pension funds. So if you've got a pension out there with a very large number of the household names, they've all got modular builds that they're working on and are going to be in your pension fund.
Now, do you remember, and it was a very long time ago, the story of the three little pigs?
I do.
And the big bad wolf, who was probably the Chancellor or something like that. And he huffed and he puffed, and no disrespect to Rishi Sunak, he huffed and he puffed and he blew the house down, which was made of straw. However, recently technology has advanced such that straw bale houses are pretty damn good, and you can't even burn them down with a match, and they won't blow away, and they can be knocked together quite quickly. Again, I wouldn't like to say whether or not they're mortgageable, but they can be whacked up very, very cheaply, so it probably doesn't even become an issue. And I've seen people test these with a what do you call it, a blowtorch, and they're not flammable and all this kind of thing, and you know, because all the straws squished together. I mean, I have a room full of books just out of camera shot, and if you were to put a blowtorch on them, they wouldn't, even though paper is very flammable, they wouldn't catch fire either, although I don't know that there are any houses made of books. But because it's all squished together, there's no oxygen that can get in there to allow it to combust. So the same applies to the straw bale house. And then,
please don't try this at home, anybody. Do not blowtorch the books on your bookshelf. That was not advice from David.
and if you do, don't come to me when the fire brigade comes. No. And incidentally, when the fire brigade comes, as I'm sure you know, most of the damage is due to the hoses and all the water and stuff, or it might be from your sprinkler system or this kind of thing, less than actual fire. But, you know...
all that straw would go very soggy, and it would be like a stable yard then, and you'll have to sweep it out.
Bring in the
bit like if you put them in the car wash here.
It would exactly be there like that, or it'd be like a barn conversion in reverse, where it's people living in it, and the next day it's donkeys. So Don't try that. Looking to the future, because we started back in the past. The future of non-standard construction is looking absolutely awesome. It's a bit primitive at the moment. We've got 3D printing where they basically use some concrete. But a lot of new materials are coming along, which are super strong and much better for the job. And I reckon, I've been doing some videos about the future recently. I reckon 10 to 15 years' time, you'll have robot brickies and things assembling houses that are made out of non-standard materials and 3D printing them, and maybe just one guy with a joystick doing it, and that will be an awesome future. But for me, it'll still be the Victorian houses which will rock my world.
I was going to say that the world of non-standard construction is a massive one, but I hope we've given you a bit of a small insight into this weird and wonderful world where pretty much everything goes. I guess we haven't covered houseboats. They could be non-standard construction because people do convert them. I've seen people convert shipping containers. That's non-standard construction. And last week I was staying in a vehicle that had been converted into a home. Again, non-standard construction. So there's all sorts of things that you can look at that are non-standard constructions.
We've got a South American restaurant near us, which is a bus. It's a double-decker bus.
Cool.
It's very nice. It's very nice. And just down the road from me, a couple of years back now, somebody stuck a porter cabin, not a porter cabin, a container, metal container, on top of a garage, cut a round hole in it, put in a spiral staircase, and sold it for, Cambridge we're talking, what do you reckon?
Don't know.
What would you pay for a shipping container on the top of an old garage?
Does it include the garage and the title to the land as well, and which part of the country?
It was all of that. It was here in Cambridge.
In Cambridge, it probably went for something like $250,000.
200. It's insane. It's insane. I had a friend who used to take longboats, and he used to sail them from up north. He had a captain. They used to come down the North Sea and moor them in Richmond or something like that. He tripled his money without a stroke of work needed.
It's about moving things from one market to another, arbitrage.
Oh, yeah. But that's not
with
normally...
auctions, doesn't it?
You don't normally lift a house up from Yorkshire or something and plonk it in central London. But imagine if you could.
Phenomenal return on your money. Phenomenal return.
Now, you were talking about out of this world, and now you're talking about phenomenal returns on your money. So let's move to the letter O, and let's talk about off-plan. So, in the 1980s, I think it was, when I was working at the BBC near Oxford Circus, some of the empty shop units along there were rented for a few weeks, shall we say, by what I can only describe as scallywags. And they would have these mock auctions where somebody would stand at the front And they have all the patter, these guys, the same as the vegetable sellers in London and all this kind of thing. So it ended up with them going, well, oh, give me a pound for what's on my mind. And then a hand would go up in the front row. And then the guy would go, congratulations, you've got the stereo and the television and this and that and that. And this guy would have a whole pile of stuff all for £1. And then the guy would say, well, I'm going to ask you again. All the hands shoot up. This is a bit like sort of NLP and courses and things. All the hands shoot up. And then the guy, well, actually, this time what I had on my mind was a plastic earring. I only got one. And, so everybody would be quite crestfallen. And then everybody would file out of this thing. And I was the last to leave. And the lucky guy in the front row, what do you know, he was very generous because at the end of the auction, I saw him giving the auctioneer back all the stuff to put back on the shelf. What a generous man. I can say no more. But off-plan's a bit like that, really, and that's why I mentioned this sort of anecdotal story. You've got a developer who may or may not go bust with some very nice plans, which will turn into a flat in 18 months' time or won't. And he's asking for some money, which he will use to build it. So I am not a great fan of off-plan. Having said that, I was all the anecdotes are coming out today. I don't know what it is, but I was driving around London with this taxi driver called Harry. He was a lovely guy, and he must have been about 70 or something. He was describing his mate, who was an even older taxi driver, who had off-plan bought a 2-bed in Canary Wharf for 70 grand, and all his mates said, "You're off your trolley, mate. You must be mad." And you can imagine that would now be worth millions. So there are occasions, but high risks, high rewards come with high risks, and off-plan is outside my comfort zone, to be honest.
Yeah, off-plan, it's not on my radar. If I was doing anything, I would actually get the land and draw the plans up, and I'd be the one selling. But I'm a doer rather than a passive. So
yeah, I like that. You made me spit all my tea out there, but absolutely. So off plan, probably not a sensible strategy.
We're in the car wash and we can wash that off.
Absolutely. We've got time for one, maybe two more. Out of hours management. Now, when you are a passive property investor, it's quite nice to hand things over to an agent. Let's suppose you've only got a couple of houses. But the question is, this agent is available to pick up the phone between 9 and 5, shall we say, to be quite generous to the agent, on a Monday to Friday, maybe sort of Saturday mornings. But what happens when that bath overflows or something and the ceiling collapses in the kitchen below? On a Sunday afternoon. And mine never did that because I used to, here's another little ninja-esque thing, next to the bath I'd always put in a little grill on the floor, at floor level, because it always, in these properties, it always goes from, the kitchen is always below the bathroom, and it always goes under the floorboards, and then it flows down the electricity thing into the light in the kitchen, and then a bit of ceiling falls off or not. And so given that's a problem, I used to tank my bathrooms above the kitchens and cost a bit more per property, but it meant that I could sleep at night. But anyway, there will be those of us who don't have that kind of thing, and emergencies always happen. Something again with repairs, we'll come to that later, but the way of categorizing them and dealing with that. But anyway, out of hours stuff needs to be done, or somebody just locks themselves out on a Saturday night after a party or something at 3 a.m. These things have to be dealt with. So for people who are, who don't like the idea of working 9 to 5 and want to work 5 to 9 instead, 5 p.m. to 9 a.m. or whatever, there's an opportunity to offer to landlords and investors a call-out service that will deal with stuff after hours. And some of it can be done remotely, like my boiler's broken. Have you tried pressing the reset switch underneath? Oh, no, thanks. So there's stuff that you can do like that. But there might be occasions where there's no lockbox. And again, if you have a lockbox and the tenant lets himself out, you tell him the number and he can get himself in. And so there's a lot of stuff like that. But there might actual call-outs, or you might just have something that a VA could deal with who could be in a different country. But out-of-hours management is something that either you, as something you might want to do, or you, as wanting to have an entirely passive lifestyle and you don't realise that the agent hasn't got that sort of emergency cover, it's something that we need to consider.
Well, I think it's a really great business idea that somebody who wants to be a bit more active or has got time on their hands and a bit bored, and like you say, a nocturnal, bit like a night watchman type job, isn't it? Out of hours service.
Very similar. I mean, if I hadn't gone into property, I could easily have been a night watchman, because I'd have the late night talk show on, and I'd be listening to that, and just keeping an eye on the old factory every now and again, and going around with my flashlight, which nowadays would be a phone, wouldn't it? Instead of the old traditional long rubber thing with a bulb at the end. I could enjoy that. None of the sort of cut and thrust of it, and just taking it nice and easy, and all my days would be free to sleep in, basically.
David is a late night DJ on Cam FM, so if you don't already know that, hook up and listen to Cam FM every Tuesday night, and you'll find the fantabulous DJ David Clouter giving his radio voice nice and slow.
Not off.
It's a great rock show. If you haven't tuned in, I suggest you tune in.
You're very kind, Andrew. You're very kind. And that with a brief flash of UFO above the car wash there, because they want to have that washed. You see, they're going to land after we drive out.
They certainly are.
And, they're not fussy at the car wash. They'll serve all their customers. But that wraps things for another week.
Superb. We look forward to catching up with you very soon again, guys and girls.
Yeah.
Leave your comments below, because we love those, and we'll all have a dance in the car wash, yeah. So, ciao for now.
Bye-bye.